I want you guys all to think of a scientist. Any scientist. Good? Now, what about an artist? Who's the first name that would pop into your head? Do you notice a pattern? Do you notice how every person you thought of is a male? When I asked you to name scientists, you probably thought of Albert Einstein, Charles Darwin, or maybe Stephen Hawking. Or when it came to artists, you probably thought of Leonardo da Vinci, Picasso, or Van Gogh. The first name that popped into your head wouldn't be the name of a woman. When I asked you about scientists, you probably didn't think of Marie Curie, Rosalind Franklin. Or when it came to artists, you probably didn't think of Frida Kahlo or Artemisia Gentileschi. Automatically in your head, you will list the most popular names that you know, and they are all male. Well, why is that? Well, it's not because of the lack of female contributions. On the contrary, women have been making significant contributions to many fields of study, but their contributions are overlooked. There is still a big gap between the recognition of men's accomplishments and women's accomplishments because our environment subjugates our girls. But most importantly, because of the limited representation of girls. And this leads to a dangerous domino effect where the lack of representation leads to lower confidence, feeling worthless, feeling unimportant. It then leads to feeling discouraged from fulfilling your own goals due to the lack of role models to look up to, because you cannot be what you cannot see. This finally leads to a bigger divide in global gender equity, as one side enjoys more opportunities, more representations, more success, while the other side doesn't. Many great names are not shared or taught because their story is deemed not worthy enough to be represented, which then affects us negatively. It affects me negatively because it reinforces the sexism in my life, it reinforces the misogyny, and it reinforces stereotypes of us being intellectually inferior. Growing up in the Middle East as a girl is difficult. I would constantly hear sexist language in my class, and it wasn't only until I grew up that I realized how horrible, unfair, and normalized it was. As someone who was very passionate about voicing their opinion and speaking their mind since they were little, I would constantly hear, "Aib, inti bint," which means, "Shame on you, you are a girl." And I'm sure many of you can relate to that phrase. But what made me upset the most was that were the female figures in my life telling me this, whether they were my teachers or my relatives. And they would tell me this when they thought I was being too loud when arguing, presenting, or just simply talking. In my classroom, the teachers were gender biased in favor of the boys. It was as if none of the work I did was good enough for them. They were too critical of me and my female peers. Zain, this is too messy. Zain, you wrote too much. Zain, try to be less bossy when I'm just simply working in a group. And this would frustrate me because why are they making me feel shameful for expressing myself? Why is someone who is like me, a girl, taking part in the same sexist culture that is harming us? And this affected me greatly as a female student because how could I have the confidence to believe in myself and achieve whatever I set my mind to when the supposed female role models of my life do not see me enough, do not see me capable? And when it came to opening my textbooks, information about women's work was extremely limited. All the books centered on the men. All the great Arab women that impacted our world, I only learned about through individual research because I was curious to know who were the ladies that shaped my world and what accomplishments did they achieve to change society. For example, we read poems and books by Mahmoud Darwish, Khalil Gibran, Najib Mahfouz, but rarely read the works of May Ziyadeh, Nawal al-Sa'dawi, or Layla al-Atrash. We were purposely written out of history. Even in the civic and vocational textbooks that we had to study, they would portray women in a certain way. They associated household work to the duties of a woman. There would be pictures, examples, and descriptions of women cooking, tidying, cleaning, not studying, not running, not leading, not inventing. And these books were harmful to our society because it reduced the representation of women being in academic or occupational settings. It just reinforces the social gender norms that are forced on us women. When I see how my society celebrates the men and neglects the woman or forces a certain image of us, It sends me 3 messages: that there are no suitable jobs for me in the future, that I do not have a space in society, and that I'm incapable of doing anything. However, despite all that, I'm still able to stand here today on the stage and present to all of you because I was given a chance. But I'm a lucky case because not every Arab girl gets the same chances as me. Not every girl is supported and encouraged like me. And not every girl has the materials like me to succeed. Unfortunately, the Arab region is not an environment that celebrates the works of women and supports them. Girls cannot turn their dreams into realities because of the limited support and the limited role models to look up to. Even though Education City and the universities offer several courses regarding women and their history and their work, I believe there needs to be more work done to fight the exclusion and fight the gender bias. Now, a way to fix the issue of the underrepresentation of women's accomplishments is to implement more hands-on work. Because we have the women's centers across Qatar Foundation, and we have the clubs fighting gender inequality. We have the resources to implement programs that center on women, such as tours, talks, and book clubs, because these can really amplify the voices of our women, celebrate their accomplishments, and even encourage other girls like me to be bold. In February of this year, I went on a trip called an Intercultural Connections and Communications trip to Washington, D.C. This trip was called Women as Changemakers, and its goal was to connect Georgetown, Qatar students to the students on main campus to facilitate dialogue about women, as well as our different experiences as women with various backgrounds. And the most important part of this trip for me was the tour that we went on. However, this tour was different from ordinary tours because this tour had a feminist lens to it. It was a tour centered on women and their stories and their accomplishments. The tour was called Toho, or A Tour of Her Own, and it invited us to delve deep into the history, the tales, the memorials, and the sites of women that were undermined from our world and left out from our textbooks, left out from our conversations. The tour was extremely fulfilling and enriching for me as I learned about these significant female figures and how they influenced our society. Because as a young girl, it can be difficult to find role models to look up to if they're erased from our history. Our historical stories are special and unique. They have to be preserved and remembered for the future generations. They have to be shown and presented. And we can do that right here in Education City. For example, during the World Cup, I was a heritage site tour guide of Al Khatir House, the one near the NUQ and GUQ campus. And through these tours, we were able to educate others about the rich history and culture of Qatar. All the people had to do was install the Education City app and book a tour with us. Now we can do the same, but instead have the tour focused on the women and share their stories. Instead of giving a tour about the architecture of the homes, we give a tour about the designated spaces for women in these houses and share what were the duties and daily activities of Qatari women and how did they enrich history. We can even host the tours ourselves in this community because it is very simple to organize this program, find volunteers excited to give these tours, and also find Qatari women willing to share with us their stories and their experiences. We can also collaborate with the cultural houses, the centers, and the museums of Qatar to educate our volunteers more about the women's culture of the region, but also to invite female professionals working there to share with us their knowledge and their work. And with that in mind, Qatar Foundation and Education City need to invite more women to give talks and host workshops dedicated to their work and their accomplishments. Because we have the centers to host these talks. We have Q&L, we have Multaqa, we have the Center for International and Regional Studies at Georgetown to host to invite these women. We have the spaces to host women to give talks, so why aren't we doing that? Our community can grow so much these presentations because it allows for a better representation of women in different fields of study, thus changing the distorted image society has on us women. It can allow women to be perceived in a different light and have them be appreciated more when others learn about her accomplishments and how did she change the world. And not only that, but these talks can inspire girls like me and women around the world to believe in themselves and achieve whatever they set their minds to. Because when women are being represented, it allows for a new generation of strong and confident girls that believe that they are capable to do whatever they set their minds to. And not only that, but we can host book clubs and collaborate with the women's centers and clubs across Education City to foster meaningful conversations about women. For example, at Georgetown, our Women's Center started a book club this summer. They provided the students with a copy of a book that told the story of 3 generations of Palestinian women and how they fought against the societal norms that restricted their lives. When the summer break ended, we regularly met up to discuss the contents of the book. And it was a great book to read and discuss because it allowed others to learn about the lives of Arab women, but it also allowed the Arab members to share their experiences relating to the female characters in the book and share how they were able to overcome the obstacles in their life to get to where they are. These book clubs need to be implemented, but on a bigger level, in order to share the stories of women and reach a wider audience. And we can do this by including the different members of Qatar Foundation, such as QNL and all the universities. Book clubs can be a great tool to amplify the voices of women from our region and from other parts of the world, because our conventional textbooks, curriculum, and media present information that leaves out the work of women, and they only center on the men. And this is extremely detrimental to our society because you cannot tell a story by only sharing half of it. Simply learning the history or the present is not fruitful without learning about how women played a big role in developing our world. There needs to be the implementation of such programs like the Women's Center tours and the talks and the book clubs, because one needs to see the history and the present through a feminist lens in order for them to get a holistic view and learn about every element of the story, rather than hear one general and gendered story that neglects the major contributions of women. Representation is important. We need to do better as a community to give women the platform to share with us their work and their stories and their accomplishments, because we have all the resources and tools at our hands. We have the contacts to start the book clubs and the tours, and we have the spaces to host talks, like this one that I'm doing right now. We have the students excited to volunteer and give these tours, and we have a community willing to educate themselves. And I know that because all of you are sitting here today to listen and learn. We just need to put in an effort to let it come to life. The theme for this TEDx is 2 steps forward. And through the implementation of women-centered tours, talks, and book clubs, we can finally take 2 steps forward in sharing the stories of our women, celebrating their accomplishments, and listening to and amplifying their voices. These programs can be our new models for equity and inclusion, as they allow for a brighter future for women. Not only does it highlight their contributions and their accomplishments, but it can also inspire young girls and women around the world to believe in themselves and have the confidence to achieve whatever they set their minds to. Sharing the stories of women from our past can push the women of our today. Once we see the strong female leaders, it becomes easier for us to envision success and pursue it. I'm grateful for the tours, the talks, and the book clubs because it introduced me to significant female figures, and this strengthened my self-esteem. It gave me the confidence to believe in my own self because I saw how other women achieved great things, and that so can I. Because like Emily Kirchbaum said, if young girls start to see themselves in the pages of yesterday, they'll believe in their capacity for all of their tomorrows. Thank you for listening.